Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Happy Monday, everybody, and good morning. There is so much to get into. Nathaniel Hackett gets his revenge, celebrating on the sidelines. The Jets having a day on social media, and Sean Payton taking the blame for the Broncos' loss, which is something that I indeed do love. I love that he got up there and took the blame. How I feel about him kind of dodging all the questions, saying I've already answered that when it comes to do you regret what you said about Nathaniel Hackett? Like, come on, coach. The world was watching in that moment. All of a sudden, Nathaniel Hackett is like America's sweetheart because of what you said. You put the Broncos in a bad position. Own up to it. Say you're sorry again. It's not a good look for you. Andrew Mason is going to join us on later in the show, you guys. I have lots of questions for you. So get ready to be typing your fingers away on your keyboard and answering lots of them in the comments. If you're going to be watching us on YouTube, we're going to have a poll for you here in just a little bit because I pissed off a lot of people yesterday. I did. Lots of people agreed. But I also pissed off a lot of people when I simply was just asking a question. So, did we just learn that Nathaniel Hackett was not the problem last year? We had many debates on this show, and I mean a lot of debates about who was problem number one last year with the Broncos and the disaster that was last season. Was it one, George Payton, who I have said from day one, yes, this is the problem, and we can get into that whole discussion. Two, Russell Wilson, because obviously you're paying your quarterback so much money, he better be able to go out there and ball out. Or was it Nathaniel Hackett? And then, of course, if you really want to get into it, last year we also said number 4 was injuries. But was it Nathaniel Hackett? Well, he just came out there. They scored more than 16 points. I know their defense obviously helped him out a little bit, but they did score a little bit more. Was it the fact that there was just a little bit of a chip on the shoulder and it was like, okay, here we go. We need to bounce back. Sean Payton came out. Like, we all saw the pregame speech that they had running out of the tunnel of like, their coach said horrible things about our coach, yada, yada, yada. Was it that? Great question. One way or another, Nathaniel Hackett proved his point. He came out. They were able to do things. Now, of course, it didn't go without saying that Nathaniel Hackett has his issues, as we all remember the clock expiring as they ran out at the half. You got to love it. We didn't hear Broncos country counting down, but we did hear the boos. Exact same boos that we heard last year for this Broncos offense. It's not good, you guys. It's not good. I want to read all of your guys' comments too, because I know you guys are going to be fired up. Trade everyone. Yeah, let's ride, Broncos Nation. Fire the GM, VJ, bench Wilson. Good morning, Rach. Good morning to you, Dom. Awful game yesterday played by the Broncos. Time to rebuild now. Yeah, it is. I called it too. Everybody that called me an idiot for saying that I was picking the Jets because Zach Wilson was going to go out there and he was going to be a terrible quarterback, you owe me an apology, all right? Hate to break it to everybody, but I would like an apology back because so many people came at me for this. You know what, though? Sean Payton has to take the blame for so much of this, but in fact, I think the Walton Penner ownership group and their GM. I don't know how much is being like coming out from George Payton. I really don't. I don't know how much his involvement is, if he's just the right-hand guy now to Sean Payton or what that's looking like. But you paid a quarterback and everybody, I even heard it this morning on Mike and Mark. They were like, oh, this is a Super Bowl coach. Congratulations. That was 14 years ago. How much in your life has changed in 14 years? I can tell you a lot has changed in mine in 14 years. That was the last time that they won a Super Bowl, that Sean Payton won a Super Bowl with the Saints, was in 2009. Great. Super. Glad he won it back then. The game of football has changed so drastically, and we're seeing another mistake. They're just paying out. They're just saying, oh, you've done it before? We're going to give you whatever kind of money you want. We're going to extend you to a super long contract. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I'm actually kind of nervous that the ownership group is going to do like a complete 180 and be like, oh, we've paid everybody such big money that we're not going to pay anybody any big money anymore. We saw it with McGlinchey. We saw it with Sean Payton. Russell Wilson, that was before the ownership group came in. I understand that. But we saw all of that. And now I'm worried that they're going to take a step back and say, we're not going to pay anybody. Well, nobody's going to come here either. I'm totally with everybody. It's time to rebuild, tear it all down. And I do think I was one of those I was a little hesitant. But after what we saw from Sean Payton, which is actually kind of funny, you guys, because I tweeted out, I have no words when they officially had lost the game. I was like, I have no words to what we just experienced when Russ had his fumble. And all of a sudden they show Russell Wilson on the sideline just getting yelled at by Sean Payton. And I'm like, well, Sean Payton had a lot of words for Russell Wilson. Here's my other problem with this relationship. There might be respect, but you have to be able to collaborate as a head coach and as your quarterback. And to be honest, it looks like Russell Wilson is out there scared of Sean Payton. It looks like he is so scared to do his own thing. And don't get me wrong, Sean has gone out there and fixed Russ to a degree, but Russ just seems like this scared quarterback out there who he has to be able to trust himself to make good plays. Russell Wilson is a good quarterback. He can be a good quarterback. We saw that for far too many years. And whatever it is about him coming here to the Mile High City that has absolutely destroyed that, I don't know what it is. But Sean Payton looks like he has terrified Russell Wilson. And you know what? Everyone's saying, oh, Sean Payton's lost the locker room. I actually don't think so. I don't, because I've seen a lot of emotional players in locker rooms before, and all of these players don't seem to be emotional out there. It's like they know that there's this disconnect, right? You get emotional when you truthfully believe that there's a product out there that is super good, and you're like, why can't we get this win? But it seems like they all realize that there's some sort of disconnect. And you go into the locker room and all these guys just seem, very straight-faced, and you're kind of like, well, what's going on? But they all answer the question. Nobody's really getting emotional. I know we had an emotional Bulls out there in Miami, but that's because they got 70 dropped on them. Like, that's a whole other level of emotion out there. But my question to Sean is, and he said he wanted to simplify things. Okay, Sean, why aren't we simplifying things then? Why is it that in the first half and the second half, we are seeing such drastic changes? It's almost like he's saying, okay, everybody, first half, we looked great. They're going to plan for what we were doing in the first half. So let's just completely go do an opposite thing that's not working. It doesn't make any sense to me. I want to go back to some of your guys' comments because I'm just so confused by what we watched yesterday. Truthfully, between the first half and the second half, I'm like, what was going on? All of a sudden, Russ is running all over, which I'm like not very happy about, if I'm being honest. I don't love that he's out there running all of a sudden. But then in the second half, we're not seeing Russ run hardly at all. Russ was making big plays in the first half. Then in the second half, we're kind of questioning like what the heck is going on out there. Cortland Sutton and the Jerry Jeudy stuff. I'm like, okay, so are we not trading wide receivers, offensive weapons? I know that's a report that's coming out there right now. So I'm curious on that, and we're going to also get into that. But I want to definitely read some of your guys' comments. Wilson is no leader. People don't like that. This team has a lot of problems. Isn't that the truth? That's why I'm just like, all right, blow it all up, everybody. We learned enough. We saw enough. Let's just blow it all up. Let's see. We need a new defensive coordinator and get rid of the players who turn over the ball way too much. I know VJ is getting so much of the crap for this, and rightfully so. It's not good, but let's all remember who bought VJ back, and you got to kind of look there. I'm going to go over to our YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube, I really want you to answer this poll. Is this year's Broncos team worse than last year? I'm going to start that poll. Head over there and answer it. And I'm not trying to make this like a trick question. I'm just generally curious because some things are better and some things are a lot worse. So 100% of people so far have said yes. And that also kind of leads me back to this whole point of, if the answer is yes, and this team is worse than last year, I'm not saying Nathaniel Hackett was a good head coach by any means, but then we're learning he wasn't the problem. Okay? We still have two other people on that list of three that are still here. And if Nathaniel Hackett or this team is worse than they were last year, then Nathaniel Hackett wasn't the problem. And I get it. He wasn't a good head coach. Trust me, I'm 100% on that team with everybody else. So everybody out there that's like, oh my gosh, he was terrible, but we now have a bigger problem. Okay, well, he wasn't the biggest problem then. He was not the problem. So it's either George Payton or Russell Wilson that's the problem. You tell me which one of those two you guys want to see. 71% of people are saying yes, VJ ain't helping his cause. What's so funny, you guys, is I always write down notes, right, as I'm watching the game, and I'm like, okay, yes, like, I love this. We can talk about this. We can do that when I come out here to chat with all of you guys every morning. And in the first half, I was like, oh, they're all making tackles. Like, that's something of an improvement that we've seen. I'm like, yes, we're making tackles. Everybody looks good. Like, nobody's getting any extra yardage from the Jets. This is great. I love to see it. We're seeing improvement. That's what you want to see from a football team. And then the second half rolled around, and I was like, oh, missed tackle. Oh, missed tackle. Oh, missed tackle. What? Oh, there's another missed tackle. Great. There's the Denver Broncos we all know and love. I've been saying it for a couple weeks now. Broncos going to Bronco. We want to say Bears going to Bear. Chargers going to Charger. Broncos going to Bronco out there for sure. I'm also confused by when Sauce Gardner left. right? We're talking about the Marvin Mims where they like toss up the ball to him. And yes, it was supposed to be a toss, not a handoff. He answered that in the locker room yesterday. It's like 3 minutes left in the in the third, right? Yeah, second half, because it was just an absolute disaster. 3 minutes left in the third. They're down 18-13. And they get the interception, and we're like, all right, here we go. Denver Broncos. Let's ride. Come on, everybody. Let's see something good. Sauce Gardner leaves the game for the play, and they decide to do a trick play. I thought we were simplifying things, Sean. What are we talking about? I thought we were simplifying things. Why are we running a trick play when the number one corner out there is gone for the Jets? Just throw the ball downfield. I don't understand that. I'm like, why aren't we throwing the ball downfield? Russell Wilson still has an arm. To anybody that says Russell Wilson doesn't have an arm anymore, you haven't been paying enough attention to him. Yeah, he's made some really stupid mistakes. The safety, terrible mistake. But at the exact same time, why are we dropping it back? Why are we letting Russell Wilson throw? Let's just try and run the ball here. Okay? I don't understand why it was so much time. Like, if we're going to throw it, make it a quick fucking slant and let's go. Excuse my language on that one. I got a little fired up there, everybody. But yeah, let's do it. Nick Bonito, that's a positive that we can talk about. I'm happy with how Nick Bonito is coming. Clearly, you don't need Randy Gregory out there. That's great news. You don't need him. Have fun in San Francisco. To be honest, if you're Randy Gregory, you're off to a better situation anyways. He's probably going to win a Super Bowl. Good for him. I was also talking with Andrew Mason and Richie Carney yesterday. And I'm like, if you are Justin Simmons, absolutely you want to leave this team. And I know he would never publicly come out in there and say that. And he'd be like, I want to play for the Denver Broncos for the rest of my career. It's a disaster here in Denver. 110% a disaster. Justin Simmons is a good enough player to play on a playoff team. So go out there, find a playoff team who's looking for a safety and just trade him. See what you can get. They got to blow this entire thing up. And this Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy thing, I'm also really confused about. So Courtland Sutton, I don't think had a single target in the first half. In the second half, he's like kind of out there, whatever. He makes a very, very much a business decision on one of the plays out there. And we're all like, oh, there's Courtland Sutton. We've seen it before. Just kind of lazy route running. We're like, great, good Courtland Sutton. We love to see it. Jerry Jeudy, they like kind of put on a show. He had a fantastic catch. Honestly, should go on a highlight reel in the second half. So I'm like, well, those are the two biggest names that have been talked about when it comes to how this trade market's going to go, essentially, right? Everyone's like, okay, the wide receivers, that's who you're going to trade. But who wants to take on Courtland Sutton's big contract? Nobody. So you're going to do one of those like 6th or 7th pick or round picks, and you're like switching. You're like, okay, we'll give you Courtland Sutton, and then we'll just like switch a pick. Okay, great. You're not going to get anything for Courtland Sutton. So are you trying to save him so that he doesn't get hurt? And you're kind of like, well, he's healthy, everybody. You can come get him. Come trade for him. Or are we trying to do that with Jerry Jeudy because you're putting him out there, putting him in positions to shine? And he did. He had a few really good catches yesterday. So you're like, all right, there he is. He can go out there and shine and whatever. I'm confused which way we're going with this because I thought both of them were going to have just like ball out. The game plan was going to be to make them both shine. And then we're like, okay, come get him, somebody, whoever wants him. Come get him. Jerry Jeudy doesn't have that big contract, so you're able to get a little bit more for him, I think. Plus, I just think he's been a little bit better. I know there's drama obviously going on with him tweeting at people, and he seems very unhappy. He didn't seem very happy. And I think he kind of knows that something's about to change for him in the locker room yesterday. He wasn't very talkative. And I know they lost, so it's like the season's going down the toilet, but he just didn't seem very talkative, like there was something else that he knew was going to happen soon. So I'm like, well, what's going on here? What's going on here with the trades? Because I'm very confused. Everybody was also talking about Frank Clark, which would be such a bummer. Frank Clark, I was like, we were all so excited, and he was honest, and he was great at training camp. And we were like, all right, Frank Clark, like, tell us about the rivalry with the Chiefs. And he's like, I don't look at this as a rivalry with the Chiefs. You guys have lost to him 15 times in a row. You're right. We have. It's not a rivalry for the Chiefs, maybe for Broncos fans. And will we see somewhat of a miracle on Thursday night on this short week? Who the heck knows? I would love it. It would also kind of send this into this really weird place for the Broncos, right? It's almost like, okay, we just need to completely have a downfall so that we can start rebuilding this entire thing. Because if you go out there and beat the Chiefs, all of a sudden Vance Joseph has his job again. And you're like, well, crap, right? That's what happened after the Bears. Everybody's like, if they lose to the Bears, Vance Joseph isn't going to have a job. I'm like, okay, sounds good. It's probably time to move on. Sorry, VJ, you're a great dude. We love you. You got a great shoe game here in Denver, but it's probably time to move on from him. They win against the Chiefs. You're not going to fire Vance Joseph. And I think on Friday, Vance Joseph will no longer be a part of this team. I said that after the game yesterday. You can't fire him on a short week. Andrew Mason had said, we've seen it before on a short week. I don't think the Broncos are going to. I think we would have already heard something. It's 10:45 in the morning. I think we would have already had heard something. Sean Payton did his media earlier. So I'm like, all right. So VJ, Friday question mark? Is that going to be the last day? You're coming home from the Chiefs game? Also, this Travis Kelce stuff, it's the biggest disrespect level, in my personal opinion. If you hold out one of your top players just because you know that team is bad enough, I would not be surprised. I know Travis Kelce went back into the game yesterday, and I know he had a touchdown, but if he's not 100%, right, the adrenaline finally wears off, and he's kind of like, oh, I don't feel like 100% on my leg, and we're all like, oh, that's not good, Travis Kelce. I would not be surprised if the Chiefs held out Travis Kelce because really they don't need him to beat this Denver Broncos team. That's just the reality. They do not really need to beat this Broncos team. So will Travis Kelce play on Thursday? Is there going to be the next level of disrespect for when it comes to, the Chiefs and how they're going to look at the Denver Broncos as just this peewee football team where you don't even have to play your best player because it doesn't matter? I don't know. I'm going to be fascinated by it. I'm really looking forward to actually how that's going to go. But you guys, the past 5 weeks were supposed to be, besides Miami, we're supposed to be the easy weeks for the Denver Broncos. It only gets harder from here, everybody. So I hope we're all ready to buckle up. And I know somebody who's he's gonna rally with me a little bit because I know he's frustrated and he's saying, let's just rebuild the entire freaking thing, as we will bring in from Orange and Blue today, our very own Andrew Mason. Good morning, Andrew Mason. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Rachel. How are you?
I am good. Oh, we'll bring you back in. Mace, I just went on a rant. I'm not gonna, there are things that I have questions about yesterday's game, and I know lots of people are always super excited to have you hanging out with us. Mace, what on earth did we watch yesterday between the first and second half, and what do we think was said at halftime? Because it doesn't make any sense. The more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I mean, I do sometimes think we tend to overrate halftime adjustments per se, but yeah, it's alarming. I mean, this is 4 out of 5 games, and the 4 games were all lost, obviously, that this team has played reasonably, 3 out of 5, they played reasonably well in the first half. They didn't play well in the first half in Miami, but they played better than they played in the second half, right? Like in the first half in Miami, as bad as it was, the offense was moving the ball.
Yeah.
After halftime, and the funny thing is, after halftime, you'd think, oh, Miami's up, 3 scores. There's going to be some chances to get some yards. They're going to play back. And nope, the offense got bageled in the second half in Miami. So it's alarming. But this was, I thought, offensively, this was the worst second half they've had, even though they had the touchdown in the fourth quarter. You had the first 5 possessions, you go without a first down. You are negative in terms of net yardage for those first 5 drives. It was just mind-bendingly bad. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's being said in halftime. What's being done? But this is, maybe Rachel, if they win the coin toss again on Thursday night, they need to take the football at the start of the game, because deferring and taking the football first in the second half, it's not working. They're not capitalizing on it. And so even though the change may not be analytically sound, sometimes you just have to do something rather than nothing.
Mace, you had tweeted this out. The Broncos' first 5 second half drives, 4 yards, -4 yards, -6, -10, -2. Have you ever seen anything like that? I'm still shook by those numbers.
I haven't gone back and added it up, but I can't recall any team coming out that bad after halftime. Maybe there was a Bears game or a Panthers game when Jimmy Clausen was their quarterback or something like that. I mean, you'd have maybe there was a Nathan Peterman game somewhere along the lines like that, but not around here. I mean, I recall some 3-and-out heavy games, but in contrast to consistently moving the ball in the first half, I don't get it. Now, Sean Payton talked about it last night. and he mentioned again this morning, he felt like he got away from the run. Okay. This is actually something I've heard coaches talk about. I remember Adam Gase mentioning this to me when he was the Broncos offensive coordinator, specifically a 2014 game against St. Louis. Like he said he almost forgot to run the football when, things got out of hand. And honestly, like, I know you get caught up in the heat of the moment, but it's like, okay, that's something that always has to be on your mind, right? Especially if you're not behind by like 3 scores, you're still in position to run the football, and they were running it well. So, like, psychologically, that's a fascinating discussion to have. Like, how do you kind of, you need to run the ball more consciously, but then you get out there and you call it a different way. That's really, it's like you get in the moment and you're calling the game emotionally rather than rationally.
Mhm. You're trying to play these mind games, and that's what
Yeah.
else I was talking about earlier, where it's like they had something that was working, and so Sean was like, "Well, Robert Saleh is probably gonna, just absolutely change it and try and fix that one. So we're just gonna completely switch it up and do something else." Like the amount of times we saw Russ run compared to not move at all, it's like drastically different. Mace, I was telling everybody that you and I were talking after the game yesterday, and it just feels like Russell Wilson is scared. He's scared, and you can't have a great quarterback go out there and be scared. Be scared he's going to do the wrong thing. Be scared he's going to get yelled at. Be scared that they're going to get booed. Like, that can't happen, and it just feels like that's what's happening with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's exactly that. I mean, he's seen a lot, but you do wonder about that. I thought on the sack at the end of the game that gave the Jets the winning touchdown, Payton was asked like what he said to Russell Wilson in that exchange, and what he said this morning was that he was telling him that the will linebacker was the free player and that you kind of got to watch out for that guy, right?
It's kind of easy to say when you're not getting tackled to the ground, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, it's easy to see when you're playing Madden. It's easy to see it when you're on the sideline. When you're out there in the heat of the moment, it's another thing. But I mean, you look at that. You look at like the safety yesterday, and if he'd gotten the ball out quick, he could have prevented that. And instead, he kind of held it, and that's the thing that you're concerned about, is that there were some moments yesterday where it seemed like he got back into some ingrained behavior that we saw last year, and that was troubling. The other thing also worth noting is that the protection wasn't as good yesterday. Mm-hmm. And Sean Payton in particular today said that the tackle play wasn't as effective as he wanted to be. And you've got 2 offensive tackles whose average per year contract value is at least $17 million apiece. You have the highest paid pair of offensive tackles in the National Football League, and they're not holding up right now. I mean, that's alarming too. Rachel, there is just so much here.
Okay, so for you, since there is so much, what's your biggest concern?
It's the run defense, because it's how it's happening. It's that you see the last 3 weeks, opposing offensive line flying off the snap. You're seeing Broncos defensive linemen get pushed back and pushed out of the way. Watch, for example, yesterday on Breece Hall's run, how Mike Purcell, who you want your nose to draw a double. You want your nose to draw a double team. And Mike Purcell, who has been that guy over his career that could occupy 2 blockers, takes one man to push him out of the way, create the lane, and then you go through. But it's not just that. It's at all 3 levels, obviously. But when you see the space that is being created in the box, that is a function of what's happening up front. And then Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, sometimes being a tick slow, and then everything is devolving from there. But that's concern number 1 for me, because teams see that and they're going to keep doing it until the Broncos figure out a fix. But the question is, personnel-wise, can the Broncos actually figure out a fix here? the way they're getting manhandled week after week, and now you're going to take DJ Jones maybe out of the equation because he got injured yesterday. That is absolutely alarming, and there's no answer for being physically dominated like that. And teams are just, unless their play callers kind of get too emotional and not rational, you're going to see teams keep doing this. I mean, we may see the Chiefs run more than you could possibly expect on Thursday just because those lanes are probably going to be there because of how the Broncos are playing. That fundament, that when you're losing like that in the trenches, that you can't cover that up. Mm-hmm. And it's going to, and Sean Payton did say that was the first thing that came up in the meeting today that he talked about. He gets it. If you can't stop the run, and not only if you can't stop the run, you're getting gashed to a historic level the last 3 weeks. This is the worst 3-week run defense span in Broncos history.
755 yards, correct?
Yep, that's the same number of home runs that the great Henry Aaron hit. That's going to be an easy number for me to remember, right? So, yeah, it's one of the 4 worst that we've seen in the last 40 years of play in the NFL.
It's just crazy.
So bad.
I have asked too. I did a poll on YouTube today for everybody watching, and I said, "Is this year's team worse than last year's team?" And I did this to just kind of say, okay, like, let's look at it, because everyone got mad at me when I said, did we just learn that Nathaniel Hackett wasn't the problem last year? Everyone got really pissed, Mace. I got called quite a few names, everybody being like, oh my gosh, how could you not say that? And I'm not saying he wasn't a problem last year, but it seems to be he wasn't the problem last year, because they put up more than 16 points yesterday. And I know the defense, they gave him a little extra boost, so don't get me wrong, I know that happened. But also, Zach Wilson, I mean, think about it. I'm not trying to be like a Nathaniel Hackett defender here, Base, but he goes into the season thinking he's going to have Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. He ends up with Zach Wilson, and he still makes Zach Wilson look decent. I mean, not great, right? Like, he's no Aaron Rodgers by any means. But to be honest, Zach Wilson looked a little bit better than Russell Wilson did yesterday. Just a little.
He still looked out of his depth a lot of the time.
But shouldn't, I mean, how many years has he been in the league?
This is year 3 for Zach Wilson. And
compared to Russell Wilson, who's going on how many?
Yeah, Russell has 12. So
my point, we got to look at the whole picture when it comes to what's going on with the Denver Broncos and that situation. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I mean, one thing I will say though is, I mean, first of all, the Jets offense, they accounted for 22 points, 3 of them on a short field, 1 touchdown. And and I actually posted about this at denversports.com on Saturday, that, the Nathaniel Hackett play called offense, 8 games last year with the Broncos, 5 games this year with the Jets, came into Sunday averaging 1.33 touchdowns per game, which is significantly lower than the lowest team has in that time. That's offensive touchdowns, right? Mm-hmm. And they had 1 score. I mean, I think, a lot of this also was just how poorly the Broncos are defending the run as well. I think Nathaniel Hackett was a problem, and I don't know that he is a solution. And the one thing in New York, and I think one thing, the offense, as inconsistent as it is here in Denver, it is still better by some distance in a lot of metrics than last year. It's very much the cliche, there was nowhere to go but up, right? That's how bad. That's how bad it was last year. I'm trying not to get caught in the recency bias of what we're seeing right now. Last year's offense was dreadful. Mm-hmm. So, but it's, as Zach By would say, 2 things can be true at the same time. Sure. So, Hackett was a huge problem last year, but there are other things. And the thing is, you plugged one hole and then the other sprung a leak, and that's honestly where you have to have a conversation about the personnel on the defense, and you have to have a conversation about Vance Joseph.
Wait, I actually love that comparison of you plug one plug and then the other one is all of a sudden shooting fire, and you're like, what's going on, right? You're just like, wait, I thought we were supposed to be done with this. It's
it's what a friend of mine would call leaky boat syndrome. You plug one hole and then another pops up, right? That's
the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, that's what it is. You got the offense to, again, you're not happy with the second halves, but the offense is at least now we're talking about 20 some, 23, 24 points a game, right? I mean, we talked about that, but the defense is getting destroyed. I mean, really, the Broncos were fortunate to allow as few points as they did, just because the Jets, and this is a function of Zach Wilson struggling. The Jets broke down in the red zone, and where those passing lanes are compressed, that's where a quarterback's flaws tend to be exacerbated, and we really saw that with Zach Wilson yesterday.
And let's be honest, Mace. If this Jets team would have had Aaron Rodgers, they could have possibly dropped a 50 burger on the Denver Broncos yesterday.
Rachel, I absolutely believe that.
I know.
I think. And the other reason why I believe that, it's not just because the Jets offense would have been effective, but if they'd gotten in on the Broncos, they were not taking their foot off the accelerator. If the Jets had gotten a lead yesterday with Zach Wilson early in the game, and they'd maintained that lead throughout the first half, and let's say it was a 2-score game, third quarter, even a 3-score game, they would have. I don't think there would have been the same magnanimity that we had from Mike McDaniel a couple weeks back. I think they would have mashed the accelerator all the way through.
100%. There's plenty more Broncos talk to happen later this afternoon, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time. You can hang out with Mace and Cecil Lammy talking orange and blue today. All things Broncos, and they're going to dive deep into it. I'm sure. Mace is always an absolute pleasure. To everybody else in the comments, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for hanging with me in my long rant. Lots of frustration here in Broncos country. Coach Prime, we got to talk about that. Plus, the Colorado Avalanche season is literally right around the door. We're going to get into that tomorrow. We will see you guys then, 10:30 a.m. Have a wonderful Monday, everybody. We'll see you then.